an impromptu question, really, because I have to ask myself this every day whenever, I talk to construction workers, really. And it's how hazardous, really, in a general sense, I understand, is the construction industry.
It is, isn't it? And it just stays by what the jobs they're doing, the tasks they're doing, the deadlines. I know some clients now, they're speeding the ground to operational. These vast warehouses is 62 weeks. And you think, how are they getting these places built in such speedy times? And they've got a good system. They're building a lot of these warehouses now, and it seems to hit the right formula. But again, do you feel pressure to do what you're doing, to cut a few corners, to keep these deadlines intact? And I think fundamentally, construction's always been about deadlines and targets. And in the best will of the world, there's been some projects I've been working on, and things have been going great, everything's going well, and then someone will come in and cut the project, cut the deadline by 3 weeks. But the guys are working to such tight deadlines anyway. It's been cut, the deadline's been cut by 3 weeks. Now, if you're telling me that guys are working all the hours they can possibly work, there's no other equipment can be brought on site to speed the job up. They chuck a few more men at the project maybe, but if you're telling me the project's got to be done 3 weeks quicker or 3 months quicker, what is the only thing that's going to give? It's safety. Right. And people know that. So once these unwritten rules come in, and Tim uses a really fantastic phrase, and I love stealing things from him. He says, well, sometimes it's the unwritten word, isn't it, or what's been said but not been said. So if I said to you, this job needs doing safely by Friday, what have I implied? But then I say to you, this job needs doing by Friday, but I'm doing it safely. I've implied something completely differently. And sometimes I think managers can be quite cute and clever by not saying do it the wrong way, but not giving it, it's just impossible to do it the right way. So facing that situation, if you are a subcontractor who's probably thinking, I've got 50 guys on this project, and if I don't get this job done by Friday, potentially my 50 guys not in work next week. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put pressure on my guys, and then they put pressure on the supervisor and put pressure on his guys. So all of a sudden you've got a guy at the shop face who's got pressure from everywhere, knowing he should speak up, knowing he should do the right thing, but in that moment thinking, oh, I'm going to get it done. Then we're going to throw in what we've been talking about, all about the mental health stuff. If that guy's then struggling himself, I ain't got time to speak up, I know I should speak up, I'm going to speak up. And then when it all goes wrong, and we have the investigation, why have you done what you've done, and you've done that wrong, and maybe give a guy a yellow card or even a red card, because he's the guy who's done the thing. And yet you can see the chain of events has gone all the way back to the fundamental issue. We squeezed the project times by 3 months. So again, has construction changed? I don't think it has. I think construction is very competitive. You've got a lot of companies working on massive budgets for small margins of profit. There's a huge disparity in what sort of wages people are earning, from the skilled people who earn a lot of money to the agency labourers who are particularly earning that much money. You could be on basic hours, basic pay. So yeah, construction is always going to be one of those melting pots where we're always going to have issues, just for the nature of what people do. When you visit a construction site and you see what's actually going on in the construction, you start to understand why things are happening.
I personally suffer from terrible height fears, and when I walk past a construction site and I just do this, I find myself just overwhelmed from the ground. So I get scared just walking past it. But how would you say, and I know we've alluded to this about the FI scale, and I think it's a fantastic idea what you're talking about there with the mental health and what well-being, as you would like to call it. How would you say it is on a construction site, including, of course, time restraints, budget constraints? How easy is it for someone just to cut a little corner, just to take a little easy shortcut? And how could that snowball? How can that easily get out of hand?
because once you take a shortcut, we all know that you take a shortcut and inadvertently it always works. So you've taken that small, tiny little shortcut and you've got away with it and nothing's happened and it saved you 5 minutes.
Right.
Do you stop there? Do you stop there? The answer is no. Then the next thing you know, you'll take another small shortcut. I don't think people go from working safe to working unsafe. I don't think that ever happens. You don't just go, that's the way to do it. Let's do it like this. It doesn't happen like that. It happens over a period of time. You go, we'll take this shortcut. Oh, we can save a couple of minutes there. We'll do this. We'll do that. I always say to when I'm speaking, sometimes I'm doing a presentation, especially in construction, if you could look at yourself when you started this project on day one, you went to all the safety briefs of how this job was going to run, and you look at yourself a year later, how far have you come from that initial meeting on safety? And the guys will all admit they're over here somewhere. And it didn't just happen. I think you're exactly right, Toby. It's these little tiny shortcuts. Can nip through that way. If we walk this, we could use that piece of equipment instead of that piece of equipment. So it saves us that little bit of time. And we all know it always takes the accident to have a reset, and all of a sudden that's why a lot of companies all get me in. We had 4th minor issues, we had 3 near misses, 4th minors, get you in just to reset people.
Right.
And that's how some people just look at it as a reset, and then a year later, oh James, we've got problems again. Could you come and get talk again to these guys? And you know, instead of looking at what it is that fundamentally is making these guys, making somebody take that shortcut. Because it is human nature. It's part of who we are as a species. We always look for the quickest route. I mean, it's a daft story, but fundamentally, I told myself afterwards, you've just done exactly what you tell people not to do. So I went to the Orkneys last week. I was speaking to, it's a great little collective. It's all for the small companies. They get me over there once a year. I don't really charge. And it's all the collective, all the little companies get together and get me over there, and I go and speak. And I've done some presentations, and I was going home the next morning. I had no cash on me for the taxi, so between the session, I'll nip to a bank. So I got my phone out and looked where the bank was. So I wheeled down the road and got to the bank, drew my £20 at the bank to pay for the taxi. And on the way back, I actually spotted a little alleyway. And I thought to myself, oh, I could nip down that alleyway and save myself a couple of minutes by walking on the smooth, pushing on the smooth path that led me around the block. If I cut down this alleyway, I can save myself pushing around the corner, which I did. Got down half the path, it turned to gravel. So I could have turned around and gone, oh, I can't go. No, I'll try. I took out my chair down this alleyway with no one there, just laid in this alleyway thinking, what the hell am I going to do? And I think that is somebody who lives and breathes health, safety and well-being will admit on that occasion I still look for the shortcut, because I think that's in all of us to so how do we protect against that? I mean, I learned a valuable lesson. I thought, that's it, Jace, don't go down no more alleyways. You normally always take the long route, and all of a sudden, over a period of time, you just drifted back again. And I think that is a danger with safety. We drift back. So what can we do to make sure we drift forward and not drift back? Hence what I talked about is it's why we always look for the next thing, just to itch that story along a little bit. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? So instead of saying we're great, safety is brilliant in this company, we've cracked it. No, you need to always be looking what's next and what's next and what's next.
What's the potential next shortcut?
So inch forward, don't inch back. You know, I like sayings, I like talking, so I always think that, and I think I'll use that and go, we need to inch forward, not inch back. Because if we do nothing, we start going backwards again. You know, and hence to talk about what we've been through, how far we actually gone back in safety in the UK since pandemic. You know, I'll be quite blunt. I said probably about 10 years, unless we do something. I'm not saying we're back to go take 10 years to get back, but if we actually say where are our sites at the moment, what's the culture on the site, I think a lot of companies will admit secretly we're way back here again. But what can we do? I don't think we need to do massive things. I just think we need to do something. Hence the well-being stuff, to bring people from back here back to where it was, and then start looking how we can go forward again.
Well, I think it's very, very interesting that you're talking about that, because my next question was going to be regarding the construction industry and regarding health and safety in the industry. Would you categorize that the construction industry is the most dependent industry on health and safety, you know, whether it be training, whether it be, you know, the reliance on ensuring employee well-being. What's your opinion on that?
Again, I think historically I always said, yeah, construction is the worst, but obviously because now I don't just deal in construction, I work in all industries. It's not a story of falling off a ladder anymore. In fact, my story calls it's not about the fall. I mean, I speak to various industries, from the railway to the shipbuilding and I think the similarities are all exactly the same. You know, it's that push contractors, subcontractors. There's a deadline. Anywhere there's a deadline, there's always that appetite to take a few shortcuts, you know, to get ahead of yourself. And if you're taking a few shortcuts early on, just get ahead of ourselves where we need to be, then we can relax a little bit. So I think there's always going to be that appetite to take a chance, because the reward is instant, isn't it? You know, I get instant reward. I've saved myself 5 minutes, or we beat the traffic. You know, I work in London to get away for these guys on a Friday on the M25. If they can get away for 2 o'clock, we probably aim for 5. But if they leave at 5, we probably aim for 11. So there's always that temptation just to take a few shortcuts to do it. So yeah, it's how we break that chain. So obviously construction is one that's really hard because it's such a transient workforce. You know, guys are working on one project. You've got companies who are trying to build a safety culture, and yet the majority of their workforce is subcontract. So how come, you know, they've got such a small actual staff of their own, yet they try and build a safety culture with guys who don't probably know who they're working for on the site, fitting bathrooms for 2 weeks, and then on another site. So how can companies create that culture? You know, we've come from a place of family companies and their own staff after 30 years to especially in construction, where you've got guys you don't know who they are. It's probably the cheapest price, and a lot of times, why is a guy on site? Because they've got the best, cheapest, you know, the most competitive quote. That's the safest company to work for. So, you know, there's a lot to be done. You know, I do know a few companies who are trying to get their own staff again. We've realised that subcontract is not always the best. It might be financially attractive on paper, but maybe in the long term, getting staff who've worked for you for a long time and educating those so they can, you know, they know who they're working for. You know, it's always nice to feel appreciated, but if you don't know who you're working for, you never get that pat on the back to make you feel good on a Friday afternoon. You're just going to be sent home as another contractor. So I think there's a hell of a lot more we can do, especially in construction, where we make people feel valued.
Well, it's interesting because I'm sometimes shocked at the level of fatalities, especially in the UK, that we have year on year in the construction industry, and it's horrible. It's devastating, and I always ponder that question myself: how can we positively influence that number so it can go down gradually? It's not going to be an overnight thing. Everyone knows that. You know, it's that magic bullet effect we were talking about previously. It's not. You know, that's impossible. It would have been done by now if that was the case. But, you know, in terms of the risks and the hazards on the construction site, you know, out of curiosity, what would you say would be, you know, what are the most common? What are the ones that maybe are slipping through, you know, the net that people are kind of, you know, missing or maybe overlooking?
Yeah, we'll go back to working at height. Working at height, especially, like I said, I don't really do a work at height presentation. I've got one. You know, when a specialist firm comes in, so I've got this work at height presentation, and to tell the truth, I probably do it about 3-4 times a year when people physically ask about working at height presentation. But I'm getting a lot more inquiries at the moment about working at height. So it's, again, it just seems like all the good practice we've had around working at height, in particular, maybe has been lost a little bit because people are back at work. I've mentioned before, they're not as confident, they're not as refreshed. But all things going off. Is that why working at height seems to be an issue? You know, a client recently, 3 in the last 3 months, serious near miss of working at heights. He says, and we thought we'd cracked this. We thought this is one of those things we'd made so much progress on, Yeah, now we're just seeing it come back. So it's always going to be one for me. Obviously, so that's what I do. Working at height still seems to be, because we all know you fall from a height. I would say, fall from any height is always an injury, whether it's instant or long term. I've not met anybody yet who's fell off a ladder and suffered no injuries whatsoever. Most of us said I got away with it at the time. 30 years later, now my hips playing up or my legs playing up. It's a long one. So working height's always been the one for me. Because it happens, and normally when someone falls from heights, the injuries are normally quite significant.
And if you don't mind me bringing up, I remember looking, I think, at one of your Proud to Be Safe videos, and one of the most touching moments in that was the fact that your son, who went up the ladder, and he said he had that stigma before he went up that ladder, and I it's absolutely, when you think about it like that, but working at height definitely, I think, is one of those areas where risk is so adverse. One more question from me, Jason. You've been incredibly generous with your time, and it was just going to be regarding the construction industry. And we've talked about the well-being, and we've talked about the FI scale. I think is a fantastic invention in the monitoring the well-being of staff. How important then is everything around that? So we're talking about the well-being and the training, because of course when you're at a construction site, we are talking about what CDM in 2015 in practice, something from the NEBOSH construction management certificate. How important is that in comparison, would you say, to that of well-being?
Well, it's a hard one for me, because I do know, obviously, there is always going to be a need for health and safety training, always, and it's ongoing. It's never going to change. But for me, the inclusion of well-being into health and safety training is fundamentally important. It's the most important thing. I think people are slowly realising. I mean, that's why I say it. I'm learning myself all the time. Don't say health, safety, and well-being. Say well-being, health, and safety. And actually, I was quite amazed. Actually, somebody in my LinkedIn area has changed his title to WSH. I think it's amazing. He's actually realised, there's more to this thing. So the quality of health and safety training is absolutely important. Doing health and safety to tick a box and doing just enough. And a question that's been raised quite a bit, man, and I do understand why. Is how much it's going to cost. Now, I normally have a conversation with my clients. We talk about what I'm going to do, all the things I'm going to do. And at the end of it, it's how much. I'm okay with that. I appreciate there's a financial, but if that's the first question people ask me, how much is it going to cost? And I say, well, how much is it going to cost you if I don't do this? That's my question. So what is the cost? The cost is going to you not having an accident. The cost is sending your workers home every single day, probably hopefully in a better place than they arrived. Spending that money so that people have a good canteen, there's decent wash facilities, there's soap in the washrooms, there's toilet paper. All these little things create that culture. So just by spending a bit of money on a speaker or some training, and then yet not investing in all these other things as well, it is pointless. It is wasted money. So a company might say their budget is X amount for a year on health and safety, but if they're not getting value out of that training, then what is the point? If a guy just thinks he's lost an hour of his day by sitting in a train, now he's got an hour to catch up on his productivity of that day. That train's had no impact whatsoever. So I think companies need to understand the value of this training, any form of training. I'm not one of these people say you must only do what we do. That any form of training on health, safety, and well-being, in my eyes, is good. As long as that training is delivering it in a good way, people feel engaged in the presentations, in the training, people join in, people go away thinking that was useful and apply some of their message what they do every day. Because if they're not, and just going, it's a tick box, and what is the point? And if anything, you've actually created more danger, because now the guys an hour behind is what he needs to get done that day. So he'll probably take a few more shortcuts just to catch up. So in a weird sort of way, if it's poor health and safety training, you've probably created more risk by doing that training for an hour or two, because guys are then feeling under pressure to catch up with the work that they've lost from the training. So yeah, it's always ongoing. It's always development. And I think for me, is the understanding how this all fits together.
Well, Jason, I have to say thank you ever so much for your time today. You've been absolutely wonderful, and you've absolutely symbolised why we wanted you on in the first place. And hopefully, who knows, that wish could come true in the future. How can our listeners and our watchers find you?
Just on the website, Anchor and Marsh website. Obviously, the stuff I do with Abby, I still get a lot of work for Abby from Proud to Safe. Abby runs that now. She's got a list of speakers. You know, that normally where it goes. Get in touch with Abby. She gets me out speaking, and I introduce Tim to the business. It's working really, really well. You know, we're in a really good place, and we're definitely changing some attitudes at the moment.
Definitely, and what you do, like I've said before, is so important. So we value you very much here, and thank you again for coming on. And it's been an honour talking to you.